I'd like to call to order the February 26, 2019 public hearing for the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm John Thompson, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, and then wall sections. Staff presents staff report. We will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the City Ordinance, Chapter 27 of the City Zoning Code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and any testimony given at the public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. We'll introduce commissioners from my left, please.
Good morning, I'm Eric Schiller.
Good morning, I'm Christopher Vella.
Jose Jalot.
And we also have with us today Ron Vila, Dennis Fernandez, Beverly Jusak, and legal Ernie Mueller. We need a motion. We have the reading of the minutes for the January 22nd, 2019 meeting. Do we have a motion for approval of those minutes or any discussion?
I'd like to present a motion to approve for minutes on January 22nd, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Meetings are approved. Meeting minutes are approved. Announcements.
Morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architectural Review and Historic Preservation Manager. I just had one item of business under announcements that we're going to have to delay until we get additional commissioner. So with that, I think we'll go right into the conflict of interest statement. If there's anyone here today that has a conflict of interest or has engaged in ex parte communication, Mr. Mueller now will facilitate that discussion.
Morning, Commissioners. All right, at this time, I'd like to ask the members of the Commission if they've had any ex parte communications regarding any matters coming before the Commission this morning. If you've had verbal communications, please disclose the sum and substance of the communications, when and where the communications occurred, and with whom they occurred. And if you've received any written communications, if you disclose the nature of those communications and file in the record.
Yes, I've been, this is Eric Schiller, and I've had communications with the principals in case number BLC 1939. I'm related to the party, and I therefore, at that point in time, will be recusing myself.
All right, very well, thank you. In other words, you'll inure to a financial benefit with that.
No, I will not.
Okay, that you have.
This is not my project.
Okay, so then, but you do, you are related to the person that's
That's
the
correct.
applicant. All right. So which means, board members, if we stay with 4 at this time, that last item, we will lose quorum. Hopefully, our 5th board member will come at that time. Thank you for the disclosure, Mr.
Of course.
Moving on, we are going to be doing the swearing. Anyone who's going to be presenting or testifying this morning, please rise and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing this morning is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. With that, we're ready to begin with our first item, BLC T1902, and Ron's going to come up with a photo essay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. BLC 02 is for the address of 1915 Republic de Cuba. The structure was constructed in 1895. It is a contributing structure in the YC1 zoning classification, approximately 2,190 square feet. This is in front of you this morning for an ad valorem part 2. A little past history that this came in front of the board in August of 2016 for pre-rehabilitation. At that time, there was a presentation given showing the condition of the building with some direction to meet the Secretary of Interior standards. At that time, Part 1 was approved to move forward. The work has been completed, and Ms. Farrell is here today to show you Part 1. So you got a little history of the building, how it looked prior, and then how it looks today. So at this time, Ms. Stephanie Farrell will address the board.
Thank you, Ron. I am Stephanie Farrell, and I'm the owner's agent. And with me today is Margie Hagler, who will be showing the photo key plans that show the current floor plans of the building. So I'm going to start out by showing you just briefly what the building looked like historically under the overhead. And it looked quite a bit different. It was the building was constructed in 1895 and was known historically as the Casa La Monrero, and it housed the Ybor City Development, Land and Development Company, and on the second floor, and then was retail on the ground floor. And the property changed use and changed appearance pretty dramatically in the 1930s, becoming the A.A. Gonzalez Clinic. And then later there was an addition to the rear of it in the 1950s, and then a further addition in 1968. And this is the historic footprint. You can see there was a balcony, obviously, and that balcony was removed. And then this is the current footprint of the building, which this is the original structure, the 1952 and 68 additions, and the kitchen addition, which was made by the developer Jack Shiver when he turned the structure into the Don Vicente Inn, which is what we have known it as for several years. So now its current use has been converted back once again to office use. And this is you will see a variety of before and after photographs of the building. This is what the property looked like in July of 2016. Very few changes on these two facades. This is the west and north facades of the building. This is the building as of December of this year. So just basically cleaning and painting and some window replacements as well. Another view of those same facades a little closer up. And that was in 2016, and here it is in 2018. Actually, here it is in 2018. And then this is the north facade pre-rehabilitation. Not much change here either, but you will see some changes as we move to the back of the building, which is the east facade. So this is the north facade in 2018. And basically all the character defining features were retained that date from 1930, and then including the 1952 additions. So this is the rear facade of the building as it appeared in 2016, and this is the kitchen addition that was made for the Don Vicente Inn. This is obviously the parking lot leads to the principal rear addition, rear entrance of the building. This is that same facade today. The differences today include a lift for ADA accommodation, and that was part of the approved Part 1 plans, and then 2 windows in the 1968 and 1999 additions. This is the south facade as it looks today. As it looked in 2016, and here it is with 4 new windows, 2 on the east facade, 2 on the south facade. So basically the rest of the exterior looks much as it did a couple of years ago. This is a closer view of the rear entry. This shows the same rear entry in 2018 with the lift for ADA accommodation. And I think that's basically sufficient for the exterior of the building. Moving to the interior. So the building was substantially altered when it became on the interior when it became the Don Vicente. And the owner at that point did not apply for the ad valorem exemption nor for the federal tax incentives. So the changes, were really, the interior changes were not reviewed from the historic preservation point of view. This is the way the interior, the first floor appeared in 2016. The wood floor is not original. The paneling that you'll see as we walk through this floor level was basically a plywood wainscoting with wood trim. So it may appear to be old in those photographs, but it is not. It's basically all of those finishes date from 1999. Now the railing we believe dates from 1930. The handrail and the stair. The light fixtures are also not early, but also date from 1999. So this is the appearance of the property today. The existing wood floors have been refinished. The lighting fixtures are a more subtle and appropriate schoolhouse type lighting fixture. And you'll see more of the staircase. It has also been preserved. So this is more of that plywood paneling and the 1930s staircase. This is that same view. If this is pre-rehab, this is that same view today, which includes repair of the original columns, restoration of the stair, and then new glazed partitions that were also part of the approved Part 1 for this project. So I'm going to show you a close-up of the plywood paneling as it existed pre-rehab. And this is that same paneling today painted. This is the south side of the west facade, that entrance as it existed in 2016. This is that same area today. So the railings have been reinstalled, the wood floors refinished, the plywood paneling painted. This is the bar that was added, again, when it's not original to the property. It was added in 1999 when the property became the Don Vicente Inn. The bar, though not original, was retained. And this is that same view as of the end of last year. So the bar retained, the plywood paneling painted, more subtle lighting fixtures. Almost lastly on this level is the kitchen area. This area no longer serves as the kitchen and has been renovated for a new office tenant. This is that same area today. Moving down into looking towards the basement. This is the staircase as it appeared in 2016. Handrail dating from likely from 1999, and then this is earlier railing. This is that same view as of the end of last year. And then there is virtually no work in the basement, but I'm going to show you just one image that shows booths that have been removed, again dating from the time period when it was the Don Vicente Inn. This is that same area. Plywood paneling has been painted, and other than that, no other work in the basement at this point. Okay, so moving upstairs, this is the landing as we move up the stairs to the second floor as it appeared in 2016, and this is the same view as of 2018. So the marble landing and stairs and treads and risers have been basically repaired, the railing repaired. Otherwise, all remains the same there. This is one of the hallways, or this is the hallway looking west on the second floor, plywood floor, because there had been basically carpeting there previously. Obviously, none of that original. And historically, of course, the second floor had been offices when it was built, was converted to clinic uses, then to the Don Vicente Inn and hotel rooms. So nothing behind the corridor walls was significant. This is that corridor today, new wood floors. And this is another view of the south corridor. Again, more plywood floors that had contemporary carpeting on it. This is the same view, new wood floors, repaired drywall, corridor walls, repaired baseboards and door trim. This is the typical second floor balcony facing, this is an interior facing the balcony as of 2016. This is a similar view of this area as it exists today. More of the office, or what became office space, former hotel room as of 2016. And this is the area as it appears today for office use. And another similar view, this is one of the suites on the second level. This is the southeast corner, and this is what it looked like in 2016. And then this is lastly, this is this same area as it exists today, right after move-in by the office tenant. So all of the character-defining features on the interior have been retained, and as well as on the exterior, and the project has been constructed per the approved Part 1 with some amendments that were staff approved. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Thank you. If there's anybody to speak regarding public comment, this is the appropriate time for that. Seeing none, we'll move forward to staff report.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. These projects are very involved, and after you see Part 1, we work very closely with the agents and the owners as they uncover certain items. We look at the project, we meet on site, and then we give them guidance per the Secretary of Interior standards on how to do or move in an appropriate manner to meet the standards. With the adaptive reuses and the ad valorem process, we look at the interior and the exterior of the structures. We look at the character-defining features of those structures and try to maintain the quality with the volume in there. With a lot of times the structures have been gutted over time, but if we find any of those features, we try to resurrect those features to the glory that were there. And I think you've seen that through this presentation. This is consistent with Part 1 that was presented, and then the Part 2 this morning. This application is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners to the applicant?
I have no questions.
Just a quick question. What was the wall interiors? Was it just a plaster? Was it a plaster material for the wall, like finish, like originally?
Probably originally the walls had been plaster, but most of them were combination and obviously a smooth finish.
Okay, and then the colors that we saw between like the lower level, you use kind of like a darker color. Is that the same as the top level with the trim and accents you have in the windows?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're similar family.
All right.
Let me also mention that Catherine Creer was the interior architect or interior designer on the project, and she's here.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
One quick question. not sure if I missed it, but the signage on the side of the building still refers to it as an inn. Are there plans to change that? And is that something that would be part of this application or just staff approval later?
Actually, I believe, let me find those exterior photographs. I believe it became the Don Vicente, but the in language was removed.
Oh, okay. I
as
may
a-
have just missed that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. I think, its recent history was, the last 20 years, it was the Don Vicente, almost 20 years, it was the Don Vicente's Inn, so just, everybody thinks of it as the Don Vicente, so the
Thank you.
owners determined to just leave that
Great.
name.
Thank you.
welcome.
I think you answered all the questions, and I don't have any. Do you feel there's a need for any rebuttal to what you've heard, or
No.
I think that it was pretty thorough? So we'll close the public hearing, and is there any discussion on the case, or do we have a motion?
I think we have a motion to approve the part 2. If there's no discussion, I can present that. Let me see if I can find that here. I just saw it. There it is. Okay. Move to approve the ad valorem tax exemption application part 2 for the plans presented at this public hearing in case number BLC T19-02 for the property located at 1915 Avenida República de Cuba for the rehabilitation of this property because based on the facts in the record, the proposed project is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards of rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion in the second? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, nice job.
Commissioners, our next case this morning is BLC 19-21 for the address of 2105 North Nebraska Avenue. This building was constructed in 1909. It is a contributing structure. Current footprint of the structure is about 1,700 square foot, and the addition that is being requested is about 1,500 square foot to top out at 15,000 square foot to total out at 32,000 square feet. They're in for a final this morning. Some past action on this. On the last public hearing in December 2018, a preliminary approval was granted. And it states that the site plan, general massing, and the connector to the historic building and renovations to the historic building were granted at that public hearing. And then all other items to be discussed at the next public hearing, which is January 22nd. On January 22nd, 2019, the project did move forward, but it did receive a continuation at that time with 6 bullet items that were attached here. And the owners and the agent know to hit these items as they move forward. Just brief photo presentation to get you familiar with the project. Property in question is highlighted in the green box. There's a parking area to the south of the historic building on Nebraska. 11th Avenue bisects the parking area from the historic structure, and then as you move to the site, the addition will be on that northern wall as it moves towards the north property line towards the interstate. Once again, you have Palm Avenue to the south, you have Nebraska to the west, you have 11th Avenue that bisects the property, parking areas to the south, historic building, and then this box is where the addition is going to take place. Front facade facing Nebraska. As we wrap around and we look at the northern elevation, there's been a lot of talk about the windows, the placement, the size, and the proportions of the windows. So I tried to get all the windows on that northern elevation. This is the south elevation, which faces 11th Avenue. And this is the rear elevation. So the parking area. The monumental stairs going up to the front. Close up of some of the windows. Another series of windows here. Installation of a door with a lower bulkhead and then the lintel above. Termination of the corners. Lower level entrance with a visor. And to conclude, just some features once you get up the ceremonial stairs and the termination and the cover up there. At this time, we'll have the agent address the council.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm Catherine Creer. I'm the agent for this building, the 2105 North Nebraska Avenue, commonly known as the German American Club. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Andrew Matson, who will give the presentation. One thing I'd like to make a comment is we've been working with this proposed tenant, and we're very excited because their proposed use is very consistent with the way this building was originally used. It's a nonprofit, and they provide services to the community, so we're very excited. We think it's a very good fit conceptually to this building. And here's Andrew Matson.
Good morning. Let's see if I get this. Okay. Thank you for your time today. I'm just going to kind of hit, since this is our third presentation to you guys, I'm going to hit some of the bullet points, go over some of the, general stuff, but not dive too deep into it. Again, I just want to bring up the main kind of design goals that we had, which was, from the historic standards. Preserve the historic building's form, envelope, significant materials, and features. The addition will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with historic materials, features, size, scales, proportions, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. The new addition will be construction will be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and the environment will be unimpaired, and any deteriorated features within the historic facility would be repaired rather than replaced. Oops. Again, just some relationship of the sites to the neighborhood. We have this is 7th Avenue, Century Ybor Complex, our project site over by the I-4 on-ramp or off-ramp. That's Palm Avenue, Nebraska, our parking, the historic building, our proposed addition. And just a brief history, the building was constructed in 1909 for the German American Club. 1919 was vacated due to unpopular sentiment against German Americans. And historic features, building as Ron pointed out. Oops. Some of the deterioration of the historic building that we have repairs to be done for the main building. Spalling. This is the view looking at the north end addition, looking east, looking north to I-4. Oops. Looking up Nebraska Avenue, across the way of Nebraska, our parking lot that we'll be using, the east facade of the old building relative to the adjacent land. Again, our site plan. We worked very hard with staff on the placement of the building. So we created the alcove to kind of match and preserve the three windows you'll see in the elevation and kind of mimic what's on the south side. We stepped the building back so that it is not as dominant. We corrected the sidewalks so that it is actually kind of more inviting, so the public and the private realm is all kind of one and the same. Our parking requirement, because we are going to go, it is some, because the proposed use will have some medical use, we are meeting the city standards for parking for the building. The scoring patterns we are going to be using will be tooled pattern, a 3x3 concrete pattern that's found in the neighborhood. This is the site fencing that we'll have around the existing parking lot. This is the overall of the site. Oops. Okay, so then here, some of the features, again, we're talking about the windows, the paired arrangements of the windows, the horizontal banding of the existing building, our proposed massing, which shows the connection, what will be shorter than the historic building and step back at the connection. Our proposed elevation, so some of the things that we had that were discussed at the last meeting was the horizontal or the vertical alignment of the windows. On our proposed addition, the second floor were shifted in. We've brought them back out to create the vertical alignment at the perimeter of the building, of the proposed building, which is very similar to what's at the existing building. The horizontal banding. Again, the canopy of the building is actually set in a position that it does not protrude past the historic building. The glass of the building, or of the connector, again, set back. We've changed the way we are actually connecting to the building. I'll get into that in a little bit. So instead of working around the details on the building, we're actually just going to kind of create a nice score line and create a very simplistic connection to the building that won't detract from the building. We'll save the pieces from when we score so that we could remake the cornice work or the stone work at a later date if necessary. Again, the canopies is set back a little bit farther, and then the horizontals or the vertical window alignments. We did the same thing on the north facade. So we realigned the north windows. Again, the canopies is pushed back. The details of the corner glass at the second floor, at the third floor, at the roof line. Again, the north facade, you can see that we stepped the canopy back so that it does not go past the front of the historic building. The realignment of the windows vertically. The connection details, like I said. And then there was concern about the back parapet. We raised it up to create a parapet, and I've talked to the mechanical engineer, and we're actually going to split the units up into smaller units so that they're even lower, and they won't have that physical presence that they had before. So we had 3 big units that would serve each floor. We've broken it up, helped zone it, so we'll have 2 units per floor, and then created that back parapet so that it creates a buffer on top of the screening. You could see the circulation corridor that we're talking about, the connection of the new building to the historic building and keeping that really unimpaired. Corrected the stair issue so that it matches the floor plan, matches the model as you work your way up. The back facade, so we have the rear exit stair. That's where the stair tower would be. We created the door, the emergency egress in the back. You can see the lower part of the mechanical screening now. It's smaller. Just our elevations And then I want to get into the sections, because this, I think we'll see the details that we have gone through. So here's this is the overall through the main portion of the building. This part right here will be the white brick facade, the glass clear story. But the next slide is the better one, which this is the connection piece. So this is how much we're actually touching the historic building. So you see we've worked with staff to really, this part will be exterior. All these windows will be within the space, but will not be touched now. So you can see that the north facade is very kept as clean as possible at the connection. Again, we're talking about we're cantilevering the floors over here to minimize the actual impact to the existing building and the openings. Our storefront system is going to be a white painted storefront system, and then we're using a clear silicone glazing for the connection piece. And then there was some concern about the colors of the glass. So we have, this is the new glass sample. So this will be the punched windows, which is actually a Solar Band 70, clear on clear. This is approved by staff. And then this would be the extra clear for the connection piece of it. And then again, the existing building was not a brick building, it was a concrete building, but for the new addition, we are actually going to propose a thin brick as a white thin brick to kind of match the same color as what the historic building is. And then I have some paints that we were talking about using as accents, but it's all going to be a white on white or kind of a neutral tones. These would only be the trims and bands. But it's going to be a white building. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Move to-
Mr. Chair,
yes.
this might be the right time because it seemed to be an abbreviated presentation. I think all members of this board that are commission that are sitting up here right now did see the previous presentations. We're here for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Which ones did you miss?
This is the first time I'm seeing this project in a public.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. As I'd enter this case, I showed some of the past action that was here with the preliminary approval, and then from last hearing with the 6 bullet items that were the majority of the discussion that happened. The gentleman this morning went through all of those bullet items in detail, addressed them on his drawings, and staff is comfortable that this application is consistent at this point now. I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vila. Public comment. If there are people here to speak for or against the project, now's your chance. Okay, seeing none, we will move to commissioners' questions. And I'll start on my left, and we'll fill in the blanks for Jose.
I've previously asked all the questions, and they've all been answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, just want to say thanks for walking us through some of these changes. I do have a couple questions. One on your site plan, I saw that the German American Club is at 45 feet. I think in your addition that you're planning is 45. So, but on your elevations you're showing 49. So, and is that just an error on the plan set or?
Yeah, on the
Okay.
height of the existing building. Yeah, so when I went out, I actually did some field measurements out. The height that we originally had measured was actually, I can only get to that point. So that's the 45 feet. And then when you go up, it's got an additional 44 feet of that parapet. So on my original measurement, I can only, when I was lasering it, I hit that top piece and I can't obviously get past it. So then I went back and did some field measurements on it and determined that this piece right here is the 45. And that's as tall as our building will be. And then they have the parapet above it.
Got it, okay. And then another thing is in our in our packet that we get from the city, we're showing a light white canopy or off-white canopy, and it looked like in yours it was a darker one.
I
so-
actually purposely on the model on this one, because it was going to be a white when I was doing it white, it was getting lost in the rendering. So I kind of darkened it up, but it still will be, it's going to be a white because there is no dark colors in the building. So I kind of just did that for the sake of this, to accentuate the canopy relative to the existing model because it was getting lost in the rendering.
Okay, and then there isn't any like openings in that canopy, or is there still?
No. I removed the openings, made it very simple. I know there was conversation about using the turnbuckle. We were talking with staff. There's no turnbuckle kind of connections within the historic building itself, and they were all columns. So we felt it was more appropriate to stick with the column method rather than the turnbuckle method, just because that would be introducing a new element that was not on the building, the historic building.
Okay, and nothing has changed on the columns of how that meets that canopy, right? So you still have like.
Yeah, it's a taper. Yeah, it's a thicker column that tapers down to a lighter, smaller sleeve.
Okay, and that's all stucco, or?
No, it's going to be steel.
Steel. Okay,
yeah.
got it. Well, like on the bottom portion that's bigger, that's also steel.
Steel, yeah,
Going all the way up.
yeah,
Okay. And then the other, in regards to your gutters that you have on the rear, and your leaders and all that, your downspouts, is that going to be one of those darker colors we saw on the palette, or?
Yeah, well, no, actually, I don't want the gutters to be accentuated. I want the gutters
Okay.
to be white to match, kind of go away, because the building doesn't have those vertical elements, so the horizontals. So if you look at the back of the building, oops. All right, I'll go to the actually colored one. There it is. So these are just, they're there for functional purposes. I don't want to accentuate it because it's the horizontal banding that is more important to me. So that will get the accent color, but the verticals they're going to be the field color. And again, you can see the parapet. And then when we go into the wall section or the building section, you can see how much, when we pitch it back, it's actually going to have, a substantial kind of parapet in the back of the building. So.
Okay. I was just curious, like, are you going underground for your drainage? You tying in a storm, or?
Yeah, we're going to we have to tie into storm because we can't, that would actually be, the water would then flow onto the adjacent property, and by code, we can't do that.
Okay, and then the other thing, I just noticed this on my way out of the neighborhood, the building I see that same issue of damage, at
Yeah.
least looking at the south-facing facade. So what is your sequence? Are you, while you're building this addition, are you going to be doing any stabilization of the German American Club?
Yeah. So we've already had a structural report done on the building and how to repair the damage to the concrete. And so while we're building the building, they're going to have to do the same at the same time, because obviously we're going to have to scaffold the building to do it. So we're going to do it simultaneously at the same time.
Okay, and then I think the intent, and I'm recalling this from two meetings ago, was to eventually get this under, I guess, the ad valorem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To seek that, okay. Let me just make sure I don't have anything else here. Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
I'm going to go where normally I would kind of play cleanup, but so Jose can catch up with what the discussion has been thus far. Okay, we've talked about in the past the elevator, and you've confirmed that it doesn't protrude.
Yeah.
Your sections and elevations continue to show no need
Yeah,
to go higher. Okay, great. On this particular section that we see on our screen, I don't know can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. On that section, there's no indication of the mechanical screen walls that you're showing in the elevations.
Yeah, because that was I was trying to, on this particular section, I was really trying to show the mechanical equipment, the heights of the equipment themselves and how they're low. We're going to put a screen wall on it just to hide it anyhow.
Okay.
But again, when I did the rendering, or not the rendering, when I did the section cut, it was specifically to show the relative
Right.
lowering
And
of the
if
equipment.
you go to like the front or the back elevation of the screen wall that you've shown.
Okay.
Okay, like that one, for example, this, when you look at it in elevation, and this one's probably more critical because you're going to see this one more because of the proximity of the screen wall to the parapet, which is why I wanted to see it in section, to see where that was landing. My point is there, I think that you could push that over a couple feet and get it centered up so that everything's the same. But that's something you can coordinate with staff, I think.
And in this, and the model itself, the reason why the screen is actually appears a lot higher is I didn't slope the roof the way it was in the model just because it was getting kind of cumbersome, and when I put the bar joist, it was just hogging up memory.
Well,
so.
in terms of proportion and relationships, you've struck a line with the cornice of the existing building. You're showing a screen wall that matches the parapet kind of
Trying to be lower than the
has a
parapet,
scale relationship to that, and the building that you're relating to is so ordered that you might as well just
Slide
scoot
that
that
over.
over a little bit. Minor detail. Go to the section through the building that you produced to show its interface with the existing building, please.
This one or the next
That one.
Okay.
In that particular one, I think you're showing a new detail there, which is the guard. There seems to be a guardrail and a pullback of the floor.
Yeah, and that was just because we don't want transom glass anywhere on that facade. And so I have to pull it away from it. And then it got into when I was pulling it away, and then that's the sphere or inch. So I just put a glass guardrail.
Right. My question to you will be, that's a fine detail for the architectural intent and the design intent that you're trying to accomplish here. Have you run it through to make sure that you can do it code-wise so that isn't a fire? Hazard?
Okay, so you mean for the vertical separation? Well, I've done buildings, it would be like an atrium style space, and what we'd end up doing is blocking just that corridor, and so that would be a separation. It wouldn't be actually at the whole building. It would just be this kind of corridor, the exit circulation. We could then, I could have the fire marshal, I could discuss it with it if we have to install some sort of shutter or some sort of way to block it off for smoke evac system.
I see that being a detail that you're going to have to address further down the line, and we'd want to make, if it were something that were to come and have to impact the facade, that'd be something we need staff involvement with, because I see that coming back into play as you get further down the road. And then in terms of the elevations, the rear elevation, that's stucco?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oops.
Do you have a three-dimensional view of it?
Yeah, I'll go into the model.
And refresh my memory, what was that before?
It was stucco. We've always had it.
We've always had it stucco?
The north facade and the east and the west facade were brick, and the west facade was always stucco.
Okay. It's just that particular, I guess the end detail and the termination, the turning of the corner is something that...
Yeah, so we don't ever like to transition materials in the same plane. So I pushed out that brick wall about 4 inches past the stucco facade to give us a good transition to it.
You're going to return the brick?
Yeah, so the brick will come around the corner, and then the stucco will die into it. And we'll have that corner facade, that edge, sorry. This will all be brick on that side. The brick wall, and then the stucco will come into it.
Yeah, I see that being a weird detail by the time you get up to the top. Because the original building is all the same thing, right? It's concrete everywhere, and it turns the corners, and it's its own thing. And this one kind of breaks up the facades as you go along. In this particular corner here, although we're turning back into the neighborhood and kind of not very noticeable, that's going to be a detail that probably needs to get worked out a little bit further with staff, I would imagine. Regarding the windows, I think that you've captured the kind of the rhythm of the building. It's not necessarily the same thing, but the windows are bookended to where along each of the floors they kind of align. They stack up and align. They're left justified and right justified, and then they do what they need to do in between. I think that's kind of the sense of the building of the original. So I think that in my mind, puts to bed some of those concerns that we had the last go around here. So with that, I will turn it over to Jose.
Great. Just two comments. While we have this drawing up, I would agree with Commissioner Thompson that when you're transitioning around the corner, it seems like you're on the right track, but you really reveal that you're using brick as a true veneer, whereas the historic building is all about the mass that's expressed by its construction. So I would recommend too working with staff and maybe beefing up that corner so that it reads more like a true pier, or adds a certain sort of thickness to the transition. I think that would be more historically accurate.
Yeah,
and
then the challenge there, sorry to interrupt, the challenge there is that your other corner terminates in glass. And your major partie of the building has the space going in between, so you see the corners going through the building, that's a good thing, but now we see that the building's kind of changing materials on the addition, where the historic one just does its own thing and turns the corner.
And then if you could bring up the section, the where you hit the historic structure. Very helpful drawing, we appreciate it. And I'm just wondering, I know there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of design changes to really accommodate how minimally you impact the historic building, but on the second level in particular, and then also on the third and the rear, you're coming very, very close to the character defining windows. And I'm just wondering what constraint have you been faced with that you can't just shift it to, like provide 6 inches?
It's deceiving, but we'll give a little more gap to that. I haven't verified exactly the windows, the exact placement, gone out myself. I'll do that again, but I will definitely move it back so that it's not right on that edge. I know, I see what you're talking about right here.
Yeah, especially in the
front. And we could easily, I mean, there's nothing that would prohibit us from doing it. It was when we were setting the original, from the very beginning of the project to where we are now, we had it actually, the original connection piece was actually in the front. So as we've been pushing it back farther, I've been working with the square footage, because the tenant has a very specific square footage need. But 6 inches is not going to make or break.
I say 6 inches just as an example, but if you're not constrained by any particular engineering feat you're trying to accomplish, the Secretary of Interior standards really sort of request that you try to
give more gap.
I would say on the front of the elevation, especially on the second floor, and on the back, all 3 floors of the historic windows would benefit from just some more mass on that side. Thank you.
Okay, we've got one more back at you.
Just a small one. So when I saw the 3D model, I saw you have like a cover over the entryway on that hallway on a lower level on the east-facing facade. So what's the plan for that? Is this going to be a simple rain hood? Or
just a rain hood, just to protect the door because we've had lots of issues with rain when it runs down the facade of a building. If you don't have a cover, it rolls into the building. And so the historic building in the 1921, they actually had little fabric awnings that were on the building. And so we proposed to kind of do that kind of awning just for protection on it, which would then go back to meet what it had historically.
Okay.
Okay. Any rebuttal to what you've heard thus far? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and we will discuss the case starting on my left.
I'm pleased with what they've done, and they've been responsive to the things we've asked for over the number of times that they've been here. I have no technical discussion here.
And I feel the same way. I had an opportunity to look back to the first proposal and see where they're at, and I think they've really made some good strides here based on feedback from us and also from staff. And just to be clear, I guess the big issue is for the rooftop units is to shift those or that louver more center to the building. And then we want to have more of a substantial material return from the brick and the base to the east-facing facade. Maybe something like pier-like, but that would be up to staff to review. And then I was just wanting a clarification. Are we so you want to give a little bit more room behind the first three windows on the second level, right? And then kind of relief what's occurring around those windows.
Express more of a vertical return, so they read as three punched openings in a mass. Right now, the glass goes right against it.
Okay.
I realize it's a rather transparent section, but I think just in terms of the guidelines, if it was pulled away, it'd be more effective.
Yeah, I think it could be the kind of the spacing of the pier in between them,
Right.
you know, so that it has the same breathing room. But that's just a specific.
Right.
Okay. All right, those are
Okay.
my discussion points.
I've been following the project, even though I haven't been at the public meetings, from the materials that have been given to me as a commissioner. I think it's at a point where we can approve it. Just one general question to the commissioners. Was there any discussion as to this building being brick? Because looking at its final iteration, and to me, the big idea here is really being very respectful of the historic structure, which reads as this sort of solid stone building, but then we have a similar massing, slightly more diminutive, which is appropriate. But to me, it just seems like might be a more effective building if expressed in stucco. I don't know, was there any discussion about that, or was it always been, brick has been the...
It's been brick, and it's been kind of modeled not like a little brother, but more like a cousin.
Okay.
That, that it's of the same family and character, but it's not one-to-one emulation. So
Okay.
that's where we've been heading with it and letting the design team explore those opportunities.
Okay, just curious, especially since the rear is being expressed in stucco.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I don't have any further comments. I mean, you've been very responsive to what we've been asking for. You've tweaked the design as we've requested. We've engaged in a lot of good conversation. I think that we're at the point where we can entertain a motion.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll go ahead and present a motion, final approval with conditions. Just bear with me here. Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented in this public hearing in BLC 19-21 for the property located at 2105 North Nebraska Avenue with the following conditions. Because based upon finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the EBOR design guidelines of the city of Tampa. So for the following reasons, we feel that the applicant has met the previous comments from this board and also has done due diligence with staff. However, with conditions attached to this, those would be to shift the mechanical louvers to more center alignment to the east and west facing facade of the building, and also to return the material that's on the north facing facade over to the east more substantially to reflect a pier-like condition. However, we'll leave that up to staff to work that with the applicant. And then for a relief on the second level bay windows to show more vertical surface area to step back the building a bit for those windows, and also for the ones that are inside the three bay windows to the east portion of the building.
I'll second the motion, and just to clarify that last suggestion is it applies to all three levels at the rear in terms of the historic windows.
Does the applicant understand the conditions that are attached?
Yes, I do.
Okay, because we appreciate that, because there's a lot that's been said, there's a lot that's been discussed, and we appreciate your ability to make the changes requested. So we have a motion, we have a second with clarifications, we have acceptance from the owner applicant. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Moving down our agenda, the next item is BLC 19-36 for the address of 2102 East 7th Avenue. The historic structure was constructed in 1927. It is a contributing structure in the YC1 zoning classification. It's a commercial building. Renovation to the primary structure, and in addition to a rooftop bar is the request. Starting with the Sanborn map. This is from 1929. You see the fabric down the commercial core of 7th Avenue. The red highlighting indicates brick construction, and you see the concentration of brick buildings along 7th Avenue. Speckled in were some wood structures as well. Property in question is highlighted in the box, which is on 21st and 7th Avenue, the corner. Does have a canopy that wraps around. You see it in the yellow, as the brick building was 2-story. A lot of the concentration has been removed, and this is apparent through the aerial. Property in question is here. You have a surface parking lot to the east and to the north. Once again, 21st and 22nd, they run north and south, and then 7th Avenue, that runs east and west. The 2-story structure has been altered on the main level here, and then the introduction of more contemporary storefront and windows. This is the primary elevation. As you go around to the east elevation, there was a building that was here that had a 0 lot line. Then looking at the street facade, this is looking down 21st here. See the series of the 2-story building that has a perforation of the canopy in the middle. And this is the rear elevation, which is the north. This is the surface parking lot to the east. This is the Columbia restaurant to the south, across 7th Avenue. Also sharing the corner is the old Columbia Bank building, which is Valley National now. Series of street shots. This is looking down 7th Avenue to the west. Turning around in the other direction, this is 7th Avenue to the east. Property in question is to your left. This is looking down 21st Street to the north. Once again, the property is here. And to conclude, this is the intersection of 7th Avenue and 21st, looking to the north. At this time, the agent will address the board. Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. Saul Fleischman, 324 Hyde Park Avenue, and I'm an agent for the owner who is here. This is a complete exterior restoration of the Reina building built in 1827, one of our beautiful historic jewels at the corner of 7th Avenue and 21st Street. What you're looking is a site plan. This is the building. Which you're looking down on is the existing awning, which we're going to completely rebuild in the same style, wood and metal, in place. And then you're looking down on the proposed rooftop bar. And this is the structure of it. We have a canopy covering the bar per se. We have elevated pedestal pavers and synthetic grass on the roof. This is all the existing Columbia parking. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. This is the ingress and egress from that parking lot off of 21st Street. We're going to show you some renderings, and these red arrows denote the approximate location of those renderings. This is the existing first floor of the building, and as you can see, it has recessed entry here, here, and here, but that recessed entry was removed years ago in favor of just a flush storefront. In our proposed first floor renovation, we're going to be restoring that recessed entry.
Mr. Chair, we're going to have to hold. We've lost quorum.
Duly noted.
Should
Sorry,
we take-
Saul.
Should we take a break, John, till we?
Want to take a 5-minute recess?
Apparently, somebody called the timeout without me knowing, so,
That's fine. Happy-
yeah. Thank you. We will resume as soon as possible.
Okay.
Let me go find somebody.
lights out.
Yeah, due to time constraints and a snafu on our parts, please, we'll consider
I'm
this part
enjoying
of
being
public
here,
comment.
actually. I missed my 10 o'clock, that was okay. You know, I'm passionate about Ybor City and the opportunities. Some of the challenges we face, though, are restoring these historic buildings. The arcade that's been in the works for 3 years is finally coming to fruition. 22nd Street's almost completed. We're working 21st and it's moving along. But the Arena Building's been a building that for the last 20 years has been an eyesore. And it was impossible for me to buy it. I had to buy it through a company up and somebody representing me in Pennsylvania so that we could try to bring back this historic building. I remember it when it was Metropolitan Pharmacy as a child. And at one time, you may not know, on 21st Street was a Naviera shipping company, which is where those immigrants from Sicily and Spain came to Tampa. And that's the name that I will restore back to Ybor City. But what I want to do on the first floor is to bring retail. I want to bring in what was supposed to have been a prototype in that building, but we opened at the airport, the Café Con Leche Ybor City, where we do churros. And by the way, that was named the outstanding new coffee concept in North America, one of the top 3 in the world. We want to bring in the retail in the corner. We want to bring in a concept from Spain that doesn't really exist, but I want to bring back the flavor of those people that immigrated to Ybor City in the 1890s. The second floor would be offices, and the third floor, why do I want a rooftop bar? Because the Columbia Cafe by Cigar Aficionado was recognized as America's original cigar bar. But as you know, we're not allowed to smoke cigars. Carlos Fuentes are one of our biggest fans, and he and I are going to partner. So when you're visiting the Columbia as a group, that you could be on the top smoking a Fuentes cigar. And the reason for the building is because, like the Columbia, they had metal buildings on the top that were of aluminum to hold equipment. So we're not trying to do something that what didn't exist, it did exist for all of our air conditioning. We took that down about 20 years ago. If there's anybody that cares about the history, it's me. And I have my daughter, the 5th generation here. Because when I'm no longer here, I want her to teach her child the importance of what our families that immigrated to Ybor City, from Asturias, Galicia, from Sicily, from Germany and Russia, that we can't let that history disappear. We can't have restaurants that are just chains. They have to tell the flavor of those people. This building, the Reina building, it was a Reina brothers that we used to buy our groceries from. Dominic Reina was a wonderful cardiologist that recently passed away, a doctor, a pediatrician doctor, my neighbor. The Reina name's a strong name, and that name should be prominent, and will be prominent in what we do. We hope that you will look at what we think. Our friend Saul Flashman, who respects historical buildings as much as I do, I know and that's why I'm proud to have him be part of that. And you're aware of some of the other projects we're working on. I need to start this so we can begin the next. Thank you for listening to me.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Richard probably doesn't even know this, but not only his family were immigrants to Ybor City. My grandfather came to Ybor City in 1907. My mother was born over his department store on 7th Avenue in 1914. So we have a lot of history in Ybor City. And we're very, very pleased to be part of this great building. So back to the presentation. This is the existing floor plan. This is the renovated floor plan. We're bringing back these beautiful recessed entries. And what we're having to do, because the existing floor is too high for handicap accessible slopes, we've demolished the floor. We're going to pour a new slab a little lower so that we can maintain the minimum required slopes to get into the building for ADA accessibility. You also see this is a fire escape, second means of egress that comes down on the north side of the building, and we'll see that in a bit. Let's move on. Oh, yes, thank you, Ken. We're replacing all the storefront with code-compliant impact glass, clear, and all the aluminum will be covered with painted wood trim similar to what's all along 7th Avenue. So none of the aluminum will be exposed on the first floor. The existing second floor is shown here, and what you see here is the stair, elevator, lobby core on the second floor, and again, that second means of egress in the back. We have existing windows that are all going to be replaced. We have a sample of it here. This is a wood-clad aluminum window with historic proportions, and it is used on the second floor, so it would look just like a real wood window from the street level. Now, as Richard said, there is precedent for rooftop bars in Ybor City. This is the existing rooftop. This is a very unusual building. It has this little skinny courtyard, and this is the roof of the first floor. So we're renovating it. This is the rooftop plan, the stair that comes up, the elevator that comes up, small lobby, providing restrooms, code-compliant restrooms, janitor's closet storage, and then this is the proposed bar, and this colored gray area is the canopy that protects the bar from rain and sun. And here is the existing edge of the building. We are approximately 8 feet back on both sides. So there is a lot of precedent in Ybor City. Unfortunately, the roof structure on the Columbia was demolished about 20 years ago. This is the Casa Santo Stefano, Richard's new restaurant to open soon, the old TMC building nearby. As you can see, it has a significant rooftop structure. We are showing other rooftop structures in the historic district as well, so there is precedent for that. Now comparing this is the east elevation of the building that faces the parking lot, which is a combination of brick and terracotta clay tile. So we're not doing anything to that because it's got a lot of character. It's really kind of an interesting side of the building. And as you can see, here is that fire escape that comes down. It's going to be bracketed on the east side, and then it's going to have columns on the north side. And then you can see the edge of our rooftop structure. The south elevation, the front elevation, this is the existing one. You can see it in this picture. This is our proposed one. So we're rebuilding the recessed entry with new matching brick. All the brick on the outside is going to be repointed. It's going to be cleaned. It's going to be restored. The north elevation, which now is kind of rough stucco and painted white, we're going to clean that up and repaint it a color very close to the brick color to make it more compatible. And again, here's our outside fire escape coming down, existing windows. The west elevation, this is existing, this is new. You can see the new windows, how they're very historic looking. They're very compatible to buildings all around it. This is our existing canopy, which you can see in terrible condition here. Again, we're going to completely rebuild it, restore it in the same style with beadboard ceiling beneath it. Here are the perspectives that I pointed out with the red arrows on the site plan. This is from the southwest. This is at the corner of 7th and 21st. Very pretty. This is from the northwest. This is that stucco facade that's getting painted to match the brick. This is from the southeast. This is where the Go Bolts sign is. And this is from the northeast. We wanted to show the precedent for the different materials we're using. All the metal, the stairs will be reminiscent of the black metal stairs. This is on the Central Ybor parking garage that we designed in the historic district. The doors, which will be of synthetic wood material, full glass with a detail at the bottom, painted black. The pulls on the doors, and this is historic precedent for that on 7th Avenue. This is the existing brick. Again, the new brick, which will replace stucco, will match this as close as possible. We have these nice globe lights. You can see them on the 7th Avenue and 21st elevation. Back in the back where we have our stair coming down, we have these simple black cans. Again, here's our window. This is our beadboard that we're using underneath the canopy. At our entrances, there's precedent in the district for polished stone at the base under the windows, and we're using something very similar. This is a black glossy Corian solid surface material, which will be very reminiscent of that, but be completely maintenance free. As far as the tile, we're going to do a small mosaic hexagonal tile with detail very similar to what's already on 7th Avenue in the district. The roof structure is going to be done with corrugated metal, reminiscent of how the historic roof structures were, and this is an example of it. We have 2 wall sections to present to you today. This is the section through 21st Street, so this would be in the east-west direction. This is the new location of the floor. Inside, we have to completely gut the facility. It's all just in terrible condition. We're providing a whole new steel structure, columns and bar joists and so forth. Here's the first floor, and here's the roof. And you can see a section through the bar. This is through the bathrooms, and this is through the bar itself and the canopy over the bar and the 8-foot separation from the parapet to the edge of the roof line. And we've kept the roof as low as possible. We have 8 feet from the new floor level of the roof to the bottom of the beam supporting the canopy. Keep as low a profile as possible. This you see the existing awning, and this is a detail we've developed that shows that Corian material, the wood covering the aluminum at the sill. And our last wall section, this is the 7th Avenue, so this is cutting through. And again, you see this is our canopy over the bar. This is our new pedestaled paver floor. We're having black metal guardrail that projects just a little bit above the existing parapet, which you can see here. This is our windows, single hung aluminum clad wood windows, black color with clear glass. This is our rebuilt canopy in black. These are our transom windows that are being replaced as well. And this is our recess entry. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Veal. I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Staff finds that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines and the Secretary of Interior Standards with further discussion. Complete presentation this morning, but going through the conditions on page 4 of your staff report. First item I'd like to touch upon are the windows on the second floor. If you go to the Secretary of Interior standards, does allow the ability to have a window to be requested that is different from just a wood window. But I like to read from the Secretary of Interior standards. It touches upon when replacing an in-kind window that's too deteriorated. If using the same kind of material is not technically or economically feasible when replacing the window, then consideration for an aluminum window may be considered, and this is on page 33. It also talks about, particular in high rises, aluminum windows may be suitable for the replacement of wood windows. So it talks about buildings that have challenges with maintenance and the installation of the wood windows. Next, I'd like to talk about the bulkhead. He did show drawings that reflected their inspiration. I wanted to show something of a more traditional application. This is on the corner of 7th Avenue. This is an inset panel. And the Secretary of Interior standards touch upon as well. If it's been altered, then you could go to the surrounding areas and see what the fabric is there. So I wanted to include, this is the Italian Club, showing more of a marble or a tile base. That could be a solution of what was presented today as well. Moving to some of the concerns that staff had as you look at the property in question. Going to new construction, I'm starting on page 89 in the Secretary of Interior standards as well. When adding a story to a two-story structure, it should be placed that it would be sensitive to the building and not negatively altering it. So what we look at setback from the wall planes. So it keeps that character in place. These are some examples, and I was down in Ybor the other day, I wanted to show you back that from the front facade to the front facade of the second story is about 50 foot, and coming in from the side street, it's about 35 feet. The angles that's important to us to discuss today are the angles that are from the street apex, from the street corners. If it's internal to the structure, you know, these buildings have zero lot line, and in the future, hopefully, these empty parcels have buildings that are there, and it's not going to be visible from certain vantage points. So the vantage point that we're looking from is from the corners. As this is taking a photo from the corner of 7th and 13th. And this is from 22nd and 6th. And you see the little pop-up. But I think it warrants much discussion to make sure that this request meets the standards in the most sensitive manner possible. Also, when we have outdoor living space now, we have to further develop, you know, what can this become? We're looking at mechanicals, we're looking at venting. Where are you going to put these units that will be sensitive to the district as well? Other items that come about as people enjoy the outdoor space are the TVs, fans, misters, heaters that add to the quality of life, but don't show up on some of the renderings. And lastly, a complete material palette to include color. I don't know if that was completely went over, but this board does have control over color. And then lastly, I think as their tenants come on board, we could work with signage administratively, but signage could be a huge positive or negative as this comes forward too. So I'm here to answer any questions, and that concludes our part of this presentation.
Thank you, Ron. Go ahead.
Question for Ron. The east lot line, I'm assuming is the brick wall, but I see a protruding fire stair. Has that been, have the lots been adjoined? Is this a legal condition?
It's been reviewed by other staff members within the city. We go through a process that we engage with zoning, transportation, solid waste, to look at all these unique characteristics. The land on both sides are owned by one property owner, so they can join that at a later date.
Okay. So it doesn't require variance for our purposes?
It does not require any action by this board.
Thank you.
I also have John Marsh with Transportation. I don't know if he wants to address the board.
John Marsh, Transportation. Let me go use the Elmo for a minute. Thank you. Transportation finds the site plan inconsistent with Chapter 22-8A. Basically, the existing awning, you can see in red, and I understand that they're going to rebuild it, is encroaching in the right-of-way, so they need to get an encroachment petition. I believe Barbara Lynch right-of-way has already placed a requirement on the property for this. As you've heard me say at other meetings, the process is must be approved by City Council, and it's recommended to be start as early as possible. It's a minimum of 90 days. We notified them about 60 days ago in case time is an issue. We do have some concern. We understand there was some confusion at the beginning of the process as to the ownership. So yeah, we do have a question. We've asked the applicant. We really haven't gotten an answer yet about this egress stair. At some point, if the property that original lot to the east there is developed, what do they propose to do with that egress? And the other question we've had, and we would like to be answered, but we are not finding it inconsistent on it, is kind of standard when we review these rooftop bars or activity scenarios, is we always would like to get some sort of measurement from this pole to where somebody would be standing. So we would kind of ask to get a clarification for that. I think they have sufficient distance, but I don't know. So those are my comments.
Thank you. With that, we have the opportunity for public comment if there are any additional people here to speak for or against the project. Seeing none, we'll move into questions from the commissioners. I'll start on my right.
Couple questions. Are you going to be going for any ad valorem on the interiors?
I'm not, I don't think so.
Okay,
We
'cause
have not talked about that.
You're
There's nothing
removing
historic left.
Yeah, you're removing what appears to be a brick wall on the ground commercial level, which could be character defining, but that's the only reason I ask.
We are not, Jose.
Okay. Secondly, I don't believe you presented the materials for the third floor rooftop deck. You've mentioned that it's metal, but is it like
It's
corrugated or,
We do have it here somewhere. It's on one of the boards.
you showed some examples. I just think we need a little bit more clarification as to what you're proposing. I know it's going to have some sort of industrial look.
It is an industrial, round, typical corrugated metal. We'll provide that to staff.
Okay. And then the guardrail that you show in the section seems very, very close to the historic parapet on both the 7th Avenue side. And I'm just, don't seem to see it in elevation, and I'm just wondering if it might be, there might be a better detail where you push it away from the parapet.
Thank you. We're sensitive to that, and we mounted it to the parapet, and it will be free from it.
Yeah, it looks like it could even get pushed in a little bit more. And then I also think we just need to clarify the detail on the 7th Avenue side where the parapet also has a decorative feature, and how do you resolve, you know, the guardrail and the taller parapet? If that meets code, yeah.
Yeah, it's shown here.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah, and
Oh, okay.
and it is set back.
All right, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that, okay. Thank you. Those were my only questions or comments.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. So I did have some questions here, and for your mechanical equipment, where's that located at?
Good question. Here, let me show you. The mechanical equipment is shown right here, and we have a corrugated metal panel screen wall surrounding it, and it will be, we haven't determined the exact height of the equipment, but it will be a minimum of 6 inches above it.
Okay. And then for the rooftop structure, how tall is that from the top of the building?
Yeah, 44 feet, 4 inches.
Okay. Just bear with me here. I had a question on the west elevation. I've noticed that your tiebacks, your canopy looked a little skewed, and I think it's because the canopy is chamfered, so it's the west-facing one. And is that due to just you're turning out with your vehicles? Is that why it's set like that?
That's an existing situation, and this edge is chamfered back. So trucks coming out here won't hit the edge of it. This is the way existing circumstance. None of these are going to be changed. Yeah, thanks. You can see looking down on it here.
Okay. All right. So I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
A few more for you. So, we've talked about the fire escape over the property line. We've discussed that. We discussed the guardrails. Do the guardrails go completely? Oh, it looks like they stop at the mechanical yard. I was wondering what the transition is and the intent from the top bar with the pavers to the grass area. Are you going to be able to occupy that, or is that just something to make it not look like a roof?
I think it will probably be, I could say it wouldn't be occupied, but if they have a crowd, it probably would be occupied. So we would need to extend the guardrail.
Okay, so there's no step down onto that. It's the same level as the...
It hasn't really been worked out yet,
Okay.
John, because of the cost of these elevated paver
Right,
systems.
it's pretty high.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess if it does need to continue and that decision's made, I guess staff would need to be aware of that, and we'd need to understand that that goes all the way around. If you do have the opportunity to step down, you might be at a point where you don't need the guardrail.
Correct.
So that could come and go potentially. On the top unit, you have the elevator shaft. It looks like coming up above the rest of the massing. Is that just a parapet on the rest of it? Did you explore looking at it as just one volume to not kind of break it up?
This is required because of the
Overcarry.
requirement for the elevator itself. We tried to keep the rest of it to the minimum height possible.
Okay, just from what's practical, not from code or anything. I guess my point is that, and it's a open question to you. Do you think that it would be less noticeable if it was all the same mass, or more noticeable if it is a staggered mass? And that's just an open question to you.
Yeah, I just think it's more interesting to have the two different masses.
On the fire escape that comes down, I'm assuming that the travel distances work all the way down to the ground, and that we don't have to enclose anything that would change the character of what we're looking at there.
The travel distances, but
If I'm on the bar and I need to egress, I have to go down that fire escape. It's not enclosed, which means that the travel distances from the top of the bar to the seventh or to the ground floor have to work.
Yes.
For it to be open.
And that's correct, they do work.
Okay, because if there's a revision to that and it has to be enclosed, then that's another consideration for everybody.
Correct.
On the backside, you show the lights going up the north elevation, looks like we've got lights going up, looks like we've got a new door at the second floor. And then as it turns around the corner, those lights continue to go up the stairs to illuminate it. And then you get to a point where I think you might need a light that has some kind of pole mount, because you run out of building and keep going up the stairs in order to illuminate it. Is that something that is, you can see it in your east elevation there? Your proposed east elevation.
Yeah, we would probably put a light on this wall. That would probably take care of it.
Okay, so it'd still be a wall mounted, we wouldn't need a pole mounted light. And
We
get
wouldn't
the
do a
foot
pole
candles
mounted
underneath.
up there, that's correct.
Okay. We talked about the step down, and then at the, and then if, I guess if there was ever, the property, we've talked about the properties being combined or being able to be combined. If that ever changed in the future, you would have to change the egress.
We would.
Off of that
Correct.
third floor.
Or accommodate it in some manner, yes.
Okay. And then, is there anywhere else in the Barrio that has Corian at the ground level?
I can't answer that question, but you know, there's all kinds of different materials. There's polished stone, which might be black marble, which we have a picture of right here. There's tile. There's wood, which is used a lot. So there's lots of different stones and tiles, and but I thought this was a good example of one that looks historic.
Okay,
So
thank
we're
you.
just trying to reinterpret it. I mean, we could match it, but this would be more durable. The other pictures we didn't show of this, there's, you know, it's
kicked in.
cracked, it's falling off, and, you know, this
Okay.
won't crack, and it will look virtually the same.
Okay, those are my questions. Any rebuttal to the conversation thus far?
No, all good questions.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing and discuss the case among the commissioners.
I think it's a great project. It can only help. I have no objection to anything they're doing here. It's all positive.
I think it's an interesting project. I am a little concerned about what we typically see on any type of bar areas, like, for example, Centro being one of them, where you see the roofs and the television. So I personally feel that could be kind of a distraction on the character of the building. So that's something that I'd like to have a clear idea what the intent is of what we're going to see from the street level, basically on approach of 7th Avenue or 21st. I am a little concerned about the placement of the rooftop unit, only because typically these are situated back. I almost feel that if there was a way to centralize this, or at least push it further back away, and I want to say at least from, I'm sorry, I'm losing a reference on the drawings, from the south elevation, I think somehow if it's just positioned back. I am a little concerned about the roof being pushed up by the elevator. I'm struggling with having those different geometries. I don't know if one solution would be just to take the elevator and kind of push it back away from the facade of the rooftop structure itself. I'm afraid that something being so dark is going to read of a heavy mass up there. And I'd like to see maybe a little bit more exploration with the proposed Corian. I think there could be some other opportunities, maybe with wood, or going with something with a little bit more grain to it, like marble. So those are my top concerns right now with it.
I just think we need some more detailing for the third floor addition. I think conceptually we understand that you're going for this sort of industrial look with corrugated carbon, but my experience with those structures is it's all in the detailing as to how successful they are, and that's something you can discuss with staff. To your point, I don't mind the asymmetry, because a lot of times historically these kind of structures that appear on the rooftops really were just very functional. So they took the form of whatever use they contained. And so that kind of asymmetry, I think, is actually historically more accurate and often more visually interesting as opposed to these pure volumes. I don't think the intent here is for it to appear to be like this 21st century object sitting on a historic building. In regards to the Corian, I'm curious. I don't think it ever appears in the historic district. The applicant's suggesting that it's perhaps more maintenance-free, but I'm kind of open to it out of curiosity, and it seems like it might be an appropriate 21st century material to use in an application like that, where historically they were looking for a little bit of contrast and a little bit of a more durable surface. And that said, I don't want to harp on the guardrail, but oftentimes you see in these situations, I'm thrilled that the second floor is being proposed to be occupied, and especially the third floor. The density of Ybor City requires all levels to be in use, I think, to achieve that kind of village density. But that said, if not done properly, if not detailed properly, the guardrails can become a distracting architectural feature without the intention of it being an architectural feature. You even saw that as evidence in some of the ones you showed as examples. So I would just request that they work a little bit more closely with staff to minimize the impact of that.
Right. I guess my concerns are with the rooftop unit is we can't just be looking at one-dimensional approach like on 7th Avenue. I mean, we have to look at it. What if we're coming from the east to the west? And so how is that going to look? Now, I get the idea of, I don't think personally have any issues of having a unit on the roof. It's just like, how is that going to look if I'm coming from the east side to the west? And I know, and I think maybe the intent is down the road, if something were to come onto this lot as another building, then maybe perhaps that would be hidden to some certain degree. But I think that's what I'm hearing maybe down the line, that might be obscured a little bit more, and we're kind of just looking at it as a present picture of today. But that's just, again, I'm just thinking of that street corner approach, and a lot of people do come up and down 7th Avenue from all directions, just like 21st Avenue.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the solution. I think it's an exciting project. You've heard a couple of the concerns that we've had here today. I'll underscore, I think Corian is a question mark. That's one of those things is, you know, if we say yes to that, then everybody comes in with Corian. And although we might have wanted to see it on this particular project, perhaps it wasn't appropriate everywhere. So that's an open-ended question that we have to deal with in terms of trying to reconcile new materials with historic structures. For the aluminum or wood-clad aluminum windows, I think that those are an appropriate response to current conditions, and that's a deviation from the historic fabric as well. I'm confident that the question of the guardrails, the notion of the massing on the third floor can be resolved with your office and staff. I'm highly confident of that, and I think that it'll be an interesting project. And to your concerns, I think that they've showed a couple of different renderings, both on the southwest side that depicts how the massing would look when you have the project completed from 7th. We are right down the street from a project that steps back as well, and it's been successful, and the kind of the distances that were put in the massing that you have along those sides, coming from, I guess, what is that, the top right image and the top left image, really are complementary of the design and its intent to stand back. I think that the relationship of the elevator and the rest of the required service functions on that side, that I think everybody, even those not in the design professions, understands that there's a building that's supposed to go there sometime in the future. I think that that's a fine placeholder for what will ultimately come in and fill Ybor, and then we'll be looking at how to fix that stair in the future, far away. But With that said, it's a fine project, a good solution, and look forward to seeing it. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to move this forward.
Does the board feel that we have enough information or enough consensus for a final approval with conditions?
Well, my thought is, it sounds like everybody was fine with the colors that we're using here. One thing that I forgot to ask the applicant, but I can just discuss here, is what do you all feel about a white coping piece? If I'm assuming that's maybe a metal coping, but I'm not sure if that's brick.
I think it's the original cast stone that's on the
Is it
building that
cast
they're
stone?
intending to keep and restore.
Okay, so that's probably why it's bright. I wasn't sure if there was some type of, if that needed to be treated. If that's the intent, then we'll just leave that as be. But in terms of the overall colors, I don't, I actually think, I kind of like the poppiness of it. We do see the blonde brick. I would just say, I think for the materials around the windows, maybe we kind of leave staff to determine whether they want a grain-like material to at least look, because here's the thing, the examples that we saw were either wood or marble had that grain or that vein look. And so I'm wondering if it would be nice for staff to kind of work with them to determine, you know, is this really the right direction we need to go? And this is a ground level scenario. It's not like maintenance would have to go and be elevated to address some of this cleanup or maintenance issues. These are my thoughts.
I would agree, and I think it's probably best for us as a board to determine what direction. The applicant feels really, really strongly about Corian.
Yeah.
I mean, does that, we've closed the comment period, but I'm going to make a motion that we look at more traditional materials. Although I'm curious about Corian, it doesn't seem like it's really appropriate for the historic building of this age. You know, if it was a 20s building, a 30s building where you saw glass introduced into storefront sections, then I think that I'd be a little bit more open to.
Well, and I think that in terms of the Corian, you know, if you let the genie out of the bottle there, you might have other uses that aren't as sensitive, and they would point to yours as, well, you let them do it. Now we're going to try to do it here. So those are you understand those are the concerns that we're trying to weigh here. I'm confident in your ability to do it. I'm just not so confident in people who might try to follow in your footsteps ability. So to your question, I would feel okay with final with conditions that the architect and owner work with staff for the things that we're concerned about.
Okay, and that I have those as the massing materials and details for the third floor shed structure, more detail and in regards to the guardrail and its placement to minimize visibility, the storefront design to include more traditional materials such as stone or wood, and then review with staff the final placement of the mechanical services on the third floor.
Okay.
All right, then I'll go ahead and make.
It's a good draft.
That was practically the motion. Okay, so I'll make a final motion, move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 19-36 for the property located at 2102 East 7th Avenue, because based on the findings of facts, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons. The historic structure is being rehabilitated with reintroducing historic design elements appropriate to the existing character, and all new additions meet the guidelines. And we're going to do a final approval with the following conditions: that the applicant present additional details, materials, and massing studies for the third floor shed addition, provide additional detailing and review placement, final placement for the guardrails on the third floor, use a more traditional storefront material in regards to the proposed Corian. The board recommends that it's either wood or stone, and that the applicant work with staff on final placement of all mechanical and services to be located on the rooftop to minimize their visibility from the street.
Okay, we have a motion with conditions. Do you understand and accept the conditions?
We do. Thank
Okay.
you.
We have an acceptance. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
Thank
you all
you.
very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Commissioners, Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. We're unable to establish the quorum for BLC 19-39 with the recusal of Commissioner Schiller. The code allows by a vote of 4 commissioners your ability to instruct staff to schedule a special meeting to accommodate that case. That's what staff's recommending that you do, and then we will determine the practicalities of that with your schedules and room availability. So if that's the pleasure of the board to discuss that, and we'll need a motion. We don't have a date. It'll be as soon as we determine that, we'll notice that within our process.
Okay. We need a motion.
I'd like to ask a question before we
We
do
have
that.
a question.
I'd like to ask this of legal. Yeah, I'm perfectly willing to recuse myself here. The question is, having no financial, having only a connection in relations and having no financial part of this, is it required that I recuse myself here? Or it's a good idea, we know that, but is it required? Because I'm perfectly willing to answer any questions about what happens here.
1 second, I'm looking at the statute.
Take your time.
That's where we need the Jeopardy music.
I do have a question for you, Dennis. So this meeting, would that be in the chambers or would it be somewhere else? Or
It doesn't necessarily have to be in these chambers. It's not required in the ordinance that these meetings are televised. My thought is that this could be done within, at the most, a week's time. And I think on the appearance of maintaining the integrity of the process, that it wouldn't be that dramatic of an inconvenience to delay it that amount of time.
Okay.
All right. Florida statutes 112.3143, paragraph 3A states in pertinent part that no municipal public officer, which would be, shall vote in which he or she knows would inure to the special private gain or loss of a relative. So the answer to that would be you would not be able to vote on this. To vote on the substantive application, I do believe that you are able to vote on the idea of having this continue. You won't be dealing with the substance of the case itself.
I'd like to make a motion then to have staff explore a date within the next couple weeks to allow this case to be heard before a full quorum of the board.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. We'll see you some other time.
Thank you. We'll be back in touch. And do apologize to the applicants. It was unavoidable, unfortunately.
Seeing no further business, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you.
Thank you.